Glug glug glug. Welcome back to Oak and Age. Today we're reviewing this, the Maker's Mark 2019 holiday release called the Making Spirits Bright Edition. Find out if it's any good here on Oak and Age. Thanks for tuning in to Oak and Age. My name is Alan. As I mentioned, we're taking a look at this today. Maker's Mark Holiday 2019 Edition. It's a special release, it's a limited release, and I'm just kind of curious, is it any good? That's what we're here to find out. Everyone knows Maker's Mark. I mean, you've seen it on shelves, I'm sure. It's the bottle with the red wax. Every bottle is hand dipped in red wax. It's just an added testament to what the company prides themselves on, which is handcrafting everything. That's kind of been their style all the way back since 1953 when they were founded. And yeah, it's kind of what sets them apart a little bit. Full disclosure, I really like Maker's Mark in general, so I'm curious to see how this stacks up. I wish I had another bottle open to compare it to, but I don't, so we'll have to go by memory there. This is a Kentucky Straight Bourbon. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. All that means is that the bourbon was made in Kentucky using a mash bill of at least 51% corn and then aged in new charred oak barrels. That's it. That's all it takes to be a Kentucky Straight Bourbon. And most bourbons on the market are Kentucky bourbon. That's not to say you can't have bourbons made elsewhere. That's a common misconception. Bourbons can be made anywhere in the United States. It doesn't have to be just Kentucky. They just need to be, as I mentioned, made using at least 51% corn and new oak barrels that have been charred. That's what it takes to be a bourbon. This particular batch is made of a mash bill consisting of corn, barley, and wheat. I believe it's 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley if memory serves. It's bottled at 45% alcohol or 90 proof. So it should be a decent sipper, not too watered down, but not so strong it'll feel like you're choking. Let's get into it then. I'm gonna pour myself a little bit. Glug, glug, glug. All right, so at a glance, it doesn't look any different than a regular Maker's. It's got that nice amber hue to it. A really nice looking spirit. On the nose, it smells like Maker's Mark. You've kind of got those cherry notes, the floral, fruity. Yeah, floral and fruity and cherry, which is a nosing profile that often Maker's Mark has, more than a lot of bourbons I've tried, really. I'm getting a little bit of toasted oak, and that's probably just imparted by the barrels. I believe this particular edition has been aged for about 6 years on average. So you're getting a nice amount of barrel char, and of course the oak tannins that all play a role in making a spirit taste like how it does. So yeah, man, there's something about Maker's that is always, it's just like an ever-present Maker's Mark thing about it, and it's very cherry forward. I'll give some proper tasting notes here. So here is where, and I'm going by memory, here is where the holiday edition tastes a little bit different to me than a regular Maker's Mark, in that I find it's far less sweet. Whereas a normal bottle of Maker's I find is fairly sweet on the palate. This one doesn't quite have the same amount of sweetness. That's not to say it's a bitter spirit, but it's just not as, I guess you just don't get that dried fruit sweetness that I would have expected this bottle to have. There's some spice to it, and an oakiness. Like you can 100% taste the oak tannins, and you know, it's employing a little bit of bitterness. I don't know if regular Maker's Mark is aged for a similar amount of time or not, and I don't know if maybe time in the barrel is what's setting this batch apart. But yeah. So definitely like a toffee caramel dried fruits, an oakiness, a little bit of cherry, but that's more on the finish, and I think that comes more from the nose than the actual upfront palate. Far less fruity than I expected it would be for a Maker's Mark in general. One thing I noticed is that it's a lot more spicy and warming, I think, than another variant of Maker's would be. And maybe that's why they've chosen these particular barrels to release as their holiday edition, just because it's more, the spice is more reminiscent of what you'd expect from like a Christmas cake or a holiday drink, a mulled wine, if you will. I think those notes are actually coming through a lot more on the palate. So to me, it actually makes sense why they would have released this as a holiday edition. It tastes like one. It tastes like a holiday drink as opposed to a standard Maker's Mark. I really wish I had a bottle of regular Makers here that I could actually do a side-by-side comparison to. And I mean, maybe I'll do another episode later where I do just that. But for what it is, it's a pretty good whiskey. But I think now it's time to score it against our must-have scorecard. Remember, this is completely subjective. It's just me breaking down a whiskey based on 3 parameters. Would I recommend it? Would I buy it again? And was it good bang for the buck? Did I get my money's worth out of this bottle? So let's see how Maker's stacks up. All right, so breaking it down then. Would I recommend? I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. Would I buy it again? I'm going to give this, again, a 3 out of 5. And is it good bang for the buck? I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5. For a grand total of 10.5 out of 15. Now, let me just dive into that a little bit more, okay? This is a holiday release, so it's kind of a limited edition, and that influenced how I scored it, because I might not be able to find this exact batch on the store shelves in 5 months, you know, and honestly, the way this tastes in comparison to what I remember a regular Maker's tasting, it's not so different and so great that I just have to rush to the store and buy another one. I really don't think if you don't have this, you're missing out on anything. Certainly, any collection would benefit from a Maker's Mark, so if this is all you can find, by all means, go nuts. I think there are, you know, certainly worse bottles to have. This didn't blow me away from a taste perspective. Again, the lack of sweetness kind of threw me off a little bit. I'm so used to Maker's Mark being a much sweeter bourbon, and this had more butterscotch and toffee and spice to it than I expected. Not a bad thing, just different. But not different in a way that I think puts it above and beyond a regular Maker's bottle. So yeah, that's why I scored it the way I did. Again, completely subjective. It doesn't mean it's a bad bottle. It doesn't mean anything other than the fact that I don't think your collection is missing out if you don't have this. That about sums it up for the Maker's Mark Holiday Release Edition. It's a pretty good bottle. You know, if you can't get your hands on one this year, no problem. They'll probably come out with another one next year, and maybe it's worth exploring then. Until next time, I really appreciate you watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know if you want me to review something specifically, and I'll see what I can do. I'm on Instagram at Oak and Age. Feel free to slide into my DMs, comment, like all my stuff, please. Help me grow this channel because I really want it to serve the whiskey lovers out there and maybe help influence people who are on the fence about whiskey to come join the dark side, because we have whiskey and it's great. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Drink responsibly, never drink and drive, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.